Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second episode of the eMLB Insider Podcast. And before we get into the eMLB, we just have to say baseball is back. We are recording this a little bit after the CBA in MLB was agreed to. Both Koty and I here are very excited, but we have Koty here because of this news. Jay Rollins, my illustrious co-host, is stuck at work because he works for the Cincinnati Reds. So with this whole CBA being agreed to, he is at work, and so thank you to Koty, the GM of the Pittsburgh Pirates in the eMLB, for agreeing to step in and as a last-minute sub. He has already taken the time to prepare for this as well. So thank you, Koty, for joining us. How are you doing this evening?
Good. I wasn't nervous until my girlfriend started asking some questions, and now she's gonna watch. So I wasn't nervous until then. So
okay. So are you nervous because she's going to be watching, or nervous when she wasn't going to be watching?
Nervous because she's gonna watch.
So she's going to be critiquing you the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on and making sure I don't have to do this by myself, because I don't know if people would want to watch me just talk to a camera for an hour. I mean, I guess people watched me stream before, but this is different.
I mean, I would.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think podcasts are just better when you have more than one person discussing topics, so it's not just one person's opinion. I think that's what makes podcasts great. But so just to introduce how we're going to do this episode, a little bit different than the last time. We had set out from the beginning to we were going to do a podcast every 2 weeks of in-game baseball action. But this past week, we had a little bit of a schedule change due to Kamish's IRL commitments with his son's hockey tournament, which they won first place, by the way. Congratulations to them, to my left fielder, who is also the goalie, Dominic Aguilera. And so with that, there was also a change to how the schedule is going to be done throughout the rest of the season. So we're taking this opportunity. Instead of 2 weeks, we're covering the last 2 weeks plus 3 days, because the sim that happened this past Monday was a 3-day sim after the next 2 weeks that we had. The next podcast, we're going to cover the other 4 days of this current week that we're in right now, plus the additional 2 weeks after that. So we're covering a little bit more material these next two podcasts just because of the scheduling change. But after that, we should be following up with our regular every 2 weeks of in-game action. We will do a podcast, which will happen to we will be releasing every week. Our goal is to release them every week before the Sunday Coffee with the Commish stream. So hopefully on Saturdays, these podcasts will go live, but you know how life goes. Sometimes you don't get those edits in when you can because you have crazy life stuff, but that's our goal. We're also hopefully going to do some one-off special podcasts, like a draft special, all-star game special, trade deadline special. So look forward to those. We also are starting to set up interviews and also guest participants in this podcast. So if you guys are a part of the universe as a GM or a creative player and want to come out for that, please reach out to myself or JR, and we would love to get you on. And then that's all the updates we have. So why don't we launch in to our recap? So as we look at the standings where we sit after this 2 weeks and 3 days, the Boston Red Sox are still atop the AL East at 18-10. Tigers have taken over the AL Central at 18-9. The AL West is still led by our defending World Series champion Los Angeles Angels. NL East is led by the Washington Nationals. My Cardinals are still leading the NL Central, and then the NL West had a change with the Colorado Rockies jumping up to the top spot. So Koty, anything that sticks out to you as we look at the standings this time around after we're over a month into the season now? Does anything jump out to you as we look at the standings so far?
Definitely Boston leading the AL East, and Colorado. Those two teams, they're not supposed to be there right now. And honestly, Boston's playing really good baseball right now, and so is Colorado. So we'll see what happens down the stretch with them.
Yeah, as if you guys remember the last episode, if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that first because it feeds into stories that we're doing on this one. I actually had Boston as my number one team in my top 10 power rankings because of their hot start. Now they've cooled off a little bit in this sim, but they had such a hot start that they had no problem holding on to the lead. And as you mentioned, Koty, they weren't supposed to be the team to beat in the AL East. It was supposed to be a two-team race between the Rays and the Orioles. And the Orioles have bounced back. They had one of the worst starts in the first sim, but they've bounced back. They're getting close to 500 again, so good for them for sticking with it and not giving up so early on in the season. But they're still, them and the Rays are both still trailing Boston. And as you mentioned, the Rockies, all of a sudden, this whole division seemed to like flipped on its head all of a sudden.
Yeah, definitely.
The Rockies jumped. I think they were they third or fourth after the first sim, and they jumped up to the number 1 spot. So that's really cool to see. So after we had,
right
what was that?
They're hot right now.
They are very hot right now. They are playing some winning baseball right now, led by, and this is a perfect transition, led by NL Batter of the Month, Grant Levine, who is a member of the Colorado Rockies, if I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong, but I think that's who it was.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
All right. I'm trying to find my news stories again so I can pull up the information. But we're going to talk about the players of the month, and that is our first one. It's Walker Smith. I knew it was a Rocky. But it wasn't Grant Levine. It was Walker Smith. Walker Smith is our NL Batter of the Month. 24-year-old had a .393 average, hit 3 home runs, 17 RBIs, and 22 runs scored. Just as a note, this was not decided by myself or Koty or JR. This was decided by the Out of the Park Baseball Engine. And so this award goes to left fielder Walker Smith. And yes, as you mentioned, he is a rookie this year. So he also captured the NL Rookie of the Month. So he swiped 2 awards this first month of the season with his strong start. Do you agree with this award as Rookie of the Month? I can see. I don't know if I agree with the Batter of the Month. What do you think, Koty?
Honestly, I think it's Grant Levine should be there, but Walker Smith, I mean, I've never heard of him, but he's off to a really hot start. So
yeah, he's not one of those.
Definitely deserves the rookie.
Yeah,
he definitely deserved the Rookie of the Month, but I'm not sure about the entire Player of the Month.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree with that too. I think the big reason why I think that is because he doesn't have. He's definitely hit well for sure, but he doesn't have those power numbers like some of the other guys, like Grant Levine, his teammate. But he definitely has been playing well, and so I can't knock him for getting the award. I just maybe would have considered some other players for the NL Batter. AL Batter is someone we highlighted in our last podcast. He was my player of the sim for the first 2 weeks of the season, and he has kept his hot start going. That is New York Yankees left fielder Estevan Florial. Over the month of April, he hit .338 with 9 home runs, 18 RBIs, and 15 runs scored. And he also drew 12 walks to post an on-base percentage of .425. So he definitely cooled off after his first 2 weeks of the sim where he was hitting over 400. Well, no one really expects to hit over 400 this day and age, but he has definitely kept the power numbers up. After now he's up to 11 home runs in the year. He's now hitting .333 with 20 RBIs. We've gotten a couple weeks into May, but that is our AL Batter of the Month. Do you agree with that one, Koty?
Absolutely. He's on pace for 69 dingers already, so I mean, he's not going to get that, but he's definitely off to a hot start.
Do you think he can keep this going throughout the season? Maybe not hit that 69, 70 home run mark, but do you think he can keep up this type of production?
Not this type of production, but not too far off.
Yeah, and one wonders, are any of his Yankee teammates going to start playing the way Florial's playing, because they're sitting at 4th in the AL East right now, and it's not because of Florial. So we'll see if hopefully some of his teammates can start getting some of the stuff that he's been using, because it's definitely working for him. Moving on to pitchers, we'll highlight the AL one first, and that is Jorge Barboza of the Kansas City Royals is our April pitcher of the month. In 4 starts, he had 3 wins, no losses, a 1.12 ERA, and he only allowed 13 hits, struck out 29, walked 9, and batters only hit 153 against him. And he has kept that going into his next start because he is still sitting at a 170 ERA, one of the top ERAs in the AL. And you got to think this is another. Is he considered a rookie still? He played a little bit last season. Is he considered a
Yes,
rookie still?
He won the Rookie of the Month award
For
as
the
well
AL.
for
So we've
pitcher.
got two players that both won a Player of the Month and a Rookie of the Month. And you don't see a lot of that. That is some fantastic stuff from these two rookies. Do you think there might have been other pitchers slated for this award, or do you think Barboza kind of won this one in a landslide?
Oh, definitely not a landslide, but you have players like Ethan Knight and um, Juan Coelho, who has 5 wins so far, and Brusdar Graterol's having a strong start for Minnesota as well.
Yeah, but it's hard to beat a 3 wins out of 4 starts and a 1.12 ERA. And that is a very strong start, especially for someone who's a rookie. Because he had his first experience in the majors late last season for Kansas City, but he had a 5.14 ERA over how many games did he play? He played 3. He started 3 games, had a 1.54 ERA, so didn't pitch the best, but he is off to a hot start this season. Gives me shades of who was the rookie Marlins pitcher who was off to a hot start last year? I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Who was that?
John Vergara.
Yeah, Vergara from the Marlins. It's giving me those kind of vibes right now, like a very hot start for a rookie pitcher.
But I think Barboza can keep that up because he's going to be a stud.
So you think he's gonna buck the trend that Vergara had last year? Because Vergara kind of faded as the season went along. You think Barboza can keep this up as a top pitcher in the AL?
I mean, possibly. I mean, he could. He's a rookie, so he might fall off at the end of the season.
As
But I
batters
don't
start to
think
figure him out.
Vergara. Yeah, I don't think Vergara is that stud type pitcher that Barboza is going to be.
Gotcha. And this was the last award was a little bit interesting for me because I thought Joe Diggs was a shoo-in for this one, but the game went with a reliever for the NL Pitcher of the Month. Closer Steve Parkerson for the Milwaukee Brewers had 9 saves across 12 appearances, had 9 strikeouts, and over 13 2/3 innings, he did not allow a single earned run. And once I saw that he had a 0 ERA across the month, and he still has a 0 ERA, he now is up to 10 saves with a flat 0 ERA. That is impressive. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, I can see why they gave him Pitcher of the Month. This guy is a closer in high leverage situations, and he ended up not allowing a single run across the entire month, racking up 9 saves. That is a pretty impressive performance. So I don't disagree with him getting the Pitcher of the Month here.
Absolutely not. He's on a roll. He's what 10 for 10 right now.
Yeah, I believe so.
On pace for 58 saves. So I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, and you have to like that as a Milwaukee Brewer fan, having someone that is being as dominant as Parkerson is right now at the back end of your bullpen, knowing that you can lock down a save. It gives shades of when Hader was in Milwaukee before he moved over to the Tampa Bay Rays in this universe, giving that sense of you put him in the game, you expect him to get those 3 outs and not have to worry about losing that game. So he's 10 for 10, 0 ERA. Over under and how many saves he gets before he allows his first run. What do you think? How many more saves do you think he can get before he allows a run?
He has a 196 BABIP against right now, so he's getting very lucky. So I think let's say 12.5.
Our over-under's at 12.5. So if in the comments, tell us what you think the over-under. Do you think you're going to take the under? Does he give up a run before his 13th save, or does he give up a run after his 12th save? So we'll see. We'll keep tabs on that, and if he does allow a run, we'll let you know. But those are your players of the month for the month of April. We are a little bit into May at this point, though. Just like maybe a week or so into May. Some other top stories around the league. We have a milestone that was reached. Third baseman Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Indians hit his 300th home run. So congratulations to Jose. He is sitting at this 300 mark at the age of 32. Do you think that he will be able to hit 400 before his career is over?
It's gonna be hard to do, but I think he has a chance. But he has aged. He's shown that he's aged the last few seasons, so who knows how long he's gonna last.
Yeah, his last season in the 2024 season, he had his lowest home run total of his career at 24, and it wasn't for lack of at bats because he had actually the most at bats that he's ever had in his career that season. So his power is draining a little bit. But do you think if he can get to age 36, hitting at least 24 home runs to match his low, that should get him to 400. Now he probably is not going to get to 500 at this pace. But I think he still has a strong case to hit that 400 mark, and to be that's not an easy task to do, to hit 400 home runs in the majors. So congratulations to Jose on his 300th home run. We also had a couple of trades that went down. First one we're going to highlight, and I was hoping that JR was going to be onto this one because we get the GM's perspective on this. But the Cincinnati Reds, I'm trying to pull up the actual news story here. Cincinnati Reds sent starting pitcher Jerry McClure and center fielder Humberto Saez to the Rangers for third baseman Orelvis Martinez. And my initial thoughts were that I did not think I think Cincinnati gave up a little bit too much in this deal, because I believe just based on both OSA scouting and what my Cardinal scout says, is that Orelvis has a similar upside to both of the players that came back to Texas in that trade. What do you think about this trade?
I don't like it for Cincinnati, honestly. I think it was more of a college career aging a little bit, and you get a shortstop. But I don't think Cincinnati's going to be contending. So, and they don't have a lot of. McClure was like their only great pitcher prospect. So giving him up, I don't see how you would do that as a Reds GM. But I mean, if it works out for him and they make the playoffs this year, then.
Well, do you think that this is something they were looking to have an immediate impact, or I think I saw it more as Correa, who is their actual primary third baseman right now, his contract is up after this year. So I think I saw this as a little bit of they're preparing to replace Correa as opposed to trying to keep Correa around. But I think they might have given up too much to get that. I don't think Orelvis did Orelvis go to the majors?
Yeah, he does.
He is. Okay, so he is in the majors with Cincinnati. Maybe he takes over at the shortstop or the third base position once Correa leaves for good. But I don't know. I just think that you might have been able to give up a little bit less, maybe like a mid-tier prospect instead of Humberto Saez instead of Saez. But again, go ahead.
They have plenty of outfield depth in the majors and in the minors. So Saez is not. I mean, Saez is gonna be really good. So if they just did Martinez for Saez, I think that would be even trade.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand giving up your lone good pitching prospect.
Yeah, that second piece is what's making it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Now, again, this is just speculation. You can never tell who wins a trade or loses a trade until you see how the players turn out. So we could be 100% wrong. And like I said, I wish I had JR on here to see what his mindset was when he made this trade. I do think they're preparing for Correa to go back into free agency if they don't bring him back on the roster.
I think he made the trade for immediate impact and for the future. So, I mean, I'm not saying Martinez is a bad player. I think they're going to improve the roster for the immediate future and for now. So,
yeah, looking at where they put him, they've actually got him. He was originally set as a third baseman going over to the Reds, but they're actually having him as the starting second baseman. He's got a ton of defensive upside. He can play multiple positions on the infield at the elite level, but he's not hitting well so far. He's under 200 as their leadoff hitter. So he's not necessarily having the immediate impact that they might have been hoping for. So hopefully he turns it around, because with what they gave up, you would hope that Martinez can turn into someone great. And on Texas side, I think they got a steal. I think both of those players could have an impact at the major league level. And if I was Texas and that trade was offered to me, I wouldn't have hesitated, because they're already sure with their up the middle shortstop and second base. So it's not like they're giving up one of their big names of the future in this trade. So we'll see how it plays out. But for now, I think both Koty and I agree that Texas got the better end of the deal, at least on paper. We'll see how it goes as the players develop.
I really like Saez a lot.
Why do you like Saez?
He's decent defensively, and just overall, he's a good hitter. I mean, he doesn't do one thing better than the other. He's just a good pure hitter.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why he appealed to Texas is that he's good. Right now, their starting right fielder is Victor Reyes, who's playing really well, but he's also getting up there in age. His contract is going to expire at the end of this season, so maybe they're grooming Saez to take over in right field, because there's no way Saez is replacing Merriman in center.
No.
And they've got the 22-year-old Danny Bradford in left. So those two are going to be in the Texas outfield for a long time. So maybe Saez is being groomed to take over for Victor Reyes. And that would mean their entire, if he does that their entire outfield would be the same age. So next year, all of three of them would be 23 years old. That is a young outfield that's going to be there for a while. So another reason why we think Texas won this trade.
Texas is going to be scary good for years to come.
Absolutely. They're very young and very talented and still have potential to grow into. They have not reached their final form yet. All right. So moving on, we had a second trade, and this time it was involving one of a community created player, and that is the Miami Marlins traded away right fielder Jim Chinchilla, pitcher Mario Doble, and shortstop Bobby Orr, who is a creative player, by the way. The Braves send over to the Marlins shortstop Leland Sunder, the created player of GM Unsundered. And from rumors I've heard from the prior GM of the Braves before he stepped down and we got a new GM over there, the GM of the Marlins, Unsundered, has been trying to get his creative player for quite a while. And with under new management in the Braves, they found a deal that worked out. And honestly, I think it's fair for both sides, just with the fact that there's a high value to be had to getting your own creative player on your team. As you well know, you've made a couple of trades to get some of your creative players back on your team that you didn't pick up in the draft. So there's a lot of value there, and I think the Braves got some valuable pieces in return for that high quality potential prospect.
Well, I didn't know Bobby Orr was a community created player, so that makes it more even in my eyes. At first, I thought Miami kind of won the trade, but
let me just get some clarification on that. He was not a creative player in the normal sense. I'm looking at his notes here. He was actually he is a community creative player, but he was creative for the MLB On the Show, and he was imported from MLB On the Show. But his creator just rejoined the community Discord, so he could potentially start getting some boost into that shortstop for the Braves.
Interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of a unique situation with a creative player for MLB The Show universe, which is now unfortunately no longer a thing because the year-to-year saves is no longer in. Sorry, Kamish. He was really disappointed about that. For the second straight year, we won't be getting that. But it's interesting to see one of the MLB The Show players coming, because normally creative players start in Out of the Park, and then we just keep them in there. But this one started in the show, moved it into Out of the Park, and now the creator is back and potentially could be boosting a player. So I think, depending on how much that the creator Bobby Orr is, could be a really good move for Atlanta. But you also got a really good potential right fielder in Jim Chinchilla, as well as a solid reliever piece. He's not gonna impress you in any way with the reliever that they got, Mario Doble, but he's a solid potential major league role player. And then you throw in Bobby Orr, who's already got a decent potential but could get higher. I think that's a fair trade on both sides.
I agree. I think Doble is vastly underrated. He has good control. He has decent movement, and that fastball and slider is up to 15 on the 15 to 20 scale. So I think he's pretty underrated, and that's a good pickup for Aiden there.
That's right.
In Atlanta.
All right. Our next topic, I know you're probably excited to talk about. That is the number one prospect in all of baseball, as rated by I almost said MLB the Show, as rated by Out of the Park, the OSA scouting. Pirates called up the number one prospect in all of baseball, center fielder Barry Bonds Jr. to the major league club. He started the season in AAA due to a poor performance in spring training. I know I jokingly said that you were doing service time manipulation, but I was definitely not serious about that. I knew it was about making sure that he was ready. But why? I'm glad we have you here for this part. Why did you decide that the time was now? And do you think he was ready when you made the call? Because out of spring training, you actually publicly stated that you didn't think he was ready. So why is now the time?
Well, first we had a bad start. And he lit up AAA. I mean, it was only 12 games. No, 11 games. He just hit really well, and I just needed a spark on my major league team. And hitting 409 and 46 plate appearances. I just thought it was time. Just needed that spark.
Do you think he's given you that spark so far?
No, absolutely not. He's hitting 250 with a 280 on base, 271 slugging. But I mean, it takes time. He's at a higher level. He's at the elite level. It's just gonna take time to adjust, probably. So I think he'll be just fine. Just has to take some time just to adjust.
Yeah, you think he's off to a little bit of a slow start, but you have to think hitting in front of the dangerous threat that is Edgar Barrios, he's going to get opportunities to hit. So hopefully he figures it out, because he, like you said, he was raking in just his short amount of time in AAA. You hope he's not one of those 4A players who does really well at AAA but then struggles at the majors. But based on the fact that he's the number one prospect, you got to think he's going to figure it out at some point.
Absolutely, and I think he will. It might just take a couple more weeks, but I'm happy on what he's doing right now. So,
yeah, definitely a prospect to watch to see if he can make a run at potential Rookie of the Year. Number one prospect, Barry Bonds Jr. is now at the majors, joining. I had a graphic that I made. I need to pull it back up so I can look at this. I took a snapshot of the top 10. The top 10 prospects as rated by OSA currently. And of those 10 prospects, Barry Bonds Jr. is now the fourth player to be in the majors this year, joining catcher Grayson Rowan, the number 2 prospect, is over in Houston. Mike Moeller, also in Houston, is the number 6 rated prospect. And then Alejandro Rosario of the Royals is the number 4 prospect. Those 4 players are all at the majors this year. And honestly, on this top 10 list, the only 2 players that aren't expected to hit the majors this year are Florino Espinosa of the Rays, who was just traded there from Detroit, and Ethan Wood of the Yankees, the right-handed pitcher over there. But everyone else is expected to at least see the majors at some point this year. But number 1 overall, Barry Bonds Jr. is looking to make an impact with the Pirates. Hopefully help the Pirates turn around their rough start. I know this is definitely not the start anyone was expecting. So hopefully Barry Bonds Jr. can figure out how to hit at the major league level and make the impact that Koty, as the GM of the Pirates, hopes he can get as when he made that trade for him. What was it, last season or the season before you traded for him?
Before last season.
Before last season, gotcha. Yeah, as soon as he didn't fall to you in the draft, you're like, I got to get him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely an impact
You
player.
see why
for sure.
now.
Yep. Yeah, he's got the potential to be one of the top center fielders in the game for sure. He's that 5-tool player and shades of Barry Bonds Sr. All right, and then our last major news story is we had a free agent signing, which doesn't really happen that often once the season gets underway. But second baseman Scott Kingery agreed to a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Tampa Bay Rays. And looking at the amount, I think like the amount surprised me the most, but then you also have to remember that this is just for a 1-year deal. So if you have the money space to make something happen where you can bring in someone like Kingery, although did he get injured? Because I'm not seeing him on their roster.
Go to the waivers. He's still on waivers.
Oh, is he still okay? Because he still has to be added to the roster. Yeah. Okay, so that was the most recent signing. So looking at the Rays roster, where do you think he fits in? Do you think he was someone to bring in to be a starter, or do you think this is more like utility role player kind of thing?
Utility role, but I just noticed that he played with Philly to start the year. 3 games. So he got released by the Phillies April 24th. So he really stayed he was just on the market for a couple weeks, so but he's definitely given the utility.
Yeah, he was straight up released by he wasn't even put on waivers. Like the Phillies are like, we're not even gonna worry about waivers here. We're just gonna drop you, and then Rays are like, thank you very much. We'll take that. But I mean, I don't think it's too big of a risk for the Rays, even at $6 million, because it is only a 1-year deal. Bringing someone who could be a solid backup to your starting infield of Fritz Flaherty, Wander Franco, Jeffrey Marte. There's no way that he's going to play over any of those three. But you bring in a utility player, hopefully can give you better. I'm trying to think through who would he potentially be replacing on the roster. It might be Lucan Baker, the first baseman, or maybe Tyler Callahan. But it looks like the GM of the Rays was trying to shore up some holes that he felt on the bench. We'll see what kind of an impact Scott Kingery makes for them. But yeah, that's the news. Scott Kingery, 1-year, $6 million deal with the Rays after being cut after 3 games in Philadelphia. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so last time on the podcast, we actually had a list of injuries, and we went through each and every one of those injuries and talked about the impact that it had to their respective teams. There were a lot of injuries this time around, and we're not going to have the time to talk through every single one of them, or else we'd be here all night. And I know you guys don't really want to hear us talk about injuries the entire time. So we're going to go through these injuries, and then we're going to talk through which ones we think are the most impactful, how they affect their team. But there were a few impactful injuries that were just, it's more than day-to-day 1 week kind of thing. The first, and this is going to be in order of least amount of time missed to most amount of times list, just to keep that order going in your head. But Giants star first baseman Michael Sean Cain is out for 2 weeks with an oblique strain. Pirates second baseman Luis Urias, a strained shoulder, out for 3 weeks. Padres left fielder Jesus Armando Sanchez with a separated shoulder, out for 4 weeks. Indian starting pitcher Shane Bieber, shoulder tendonitis for 4 weeks. Marlins left fielder Andy Diaz out 5 weeks with shoulder tendonitis. Reds relief pitcher Graham Ashcraft is out for 6 weeks with elbow tendonitis. Yankee starting pitcher Clark Schmidt, strained hamstring for 6 weeks. Braves catcher William Contreras, fractured thumb for 6 weeks. Astros center fielder Sammy, is it Isla? Sammy Isla, broken bone in his elbow, is going to be out for 7 months. So that's pretty much his season done. And then Mariners relief pitcher Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn tore his UCL. He is out for at least a year. So a lot of injuries here. A couple of injuries that are going to keep players out for a long time. 2 UCL injuries to Vaughn and Serratos. and the missing for the season is Isla for the Astros, their stud young center fielder. Which one do you think is the most impactful injury to their team?
Probably Isla. I mean, he's he's probably a top 5 center fielder in the game right now in this league. And Houston, I mean, they have luck with injuries the last few years. Have been awful with Chapman 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Isla, he was off to a hot start. Now, his season's done.
Yeah. And not only that, but his replacement, Byron Buxton, he's doing decent, but to lose a player of Isla's production is really hard to replace. We kind of talked about that last podcast when we were talking about the injury to shortstop for the Orioles, Nick Spence. They didn't really have a lot of players that could match his production, and that might be the case here. You have a lot of decent players in the outfield for the Astros, but no one to the level of Isla. I think an interesting injury to watch here is actually the injury to Braves catcher William Contreras, because that potentially opens the door for top catching prospect and creative player of the GM of the Braves, Aiden Pearson, to potentially make his major league debut. Now, he might not quite be ready based on evaluation, but the injury might just force Aiden's hand here and say you might need to see if he's ready to go now, because Contreras is your starting catcher. Dalton Varsho is an okay catcher. He's actually hitting 312 right now, but he's not exactly the best defensive catcher. There's questions about him being able to handle the staff, who's already lost Max Fried for the year, for most of the year. So I think one of the more, and I just wasn't going to copy you because I think Isla's probably the biggest impact, but I think will be interesting to see what direction Aiden decides to go with the losing his catcher Contreras. Will he go to his top catching prospect in Aiden Pearson, or does he go to just try to fill the void for 6 weeks and just get by?
I mean, I think you have to call up Pearson. I mean, his 19 catcher ability. His catcher rating's already at 16. And his hitting stats are not too far off to their potential. So, we still has to develop, but I don't think his development would hurt if you bring him up.
Yeah, he's already a stud defensively, and and this is just going to be me showing my Cardinals bias. He reminds me of my catcher, MJ Melendez. He's got all defense and not very much offense, but the difference is that Aiden still has the potential to develop that offense. You've got the potential for an elite offensive catcher as well as the elite defense that he already possesses. So it might be one of those cases, like you mentioned, just bring him up because of his defensive ability and see if the offense can develop at the major league level instead of developing it at the AAA level. So it'll be interesting to see if Aiden, the catcher, can make enough of an impact to say maybe Contreras doesn't even get the starting job back when he comes back from injury. So that'll be interesting to watch. Now, again, Dalton Varsho has not done a bad job in his time. He just doesn't have that defensive upside as the other catchers on the roster. So that'll be interesting to see. So those are all of our major injuries. The other ones are either not very long. I mean, you could comment on, do you think the Luis Urias injury is going to affect your team at all?
Possibly. I mean, he's a good home base guy. But I got Spitzer there that I got from Seattle. We haven't really talked about the Ricky Vaughn injury that much,
true.
But I think that's pretty significant. And honestly, their pitching has been doing much better than their offense right now, which is surprising because Seattle's offense is projected to be one of the best, at least power-wise, and it hasn't been there. I mean, Serrano's been Serrano this season so far, but losing Eric Kelly for a significant amount of time.
Yep.
Just other players not performing well. But their pitching staff's doing good, and that Ricky Vaughn injury is going to really hurt them.
Yeah, looking at
this
their team
season.
rankings, the Mariners right now actually have the best starter ERA in the AL, which is definitely not something you expected. As you mentioned, they're known as a hitting team first and a pitching team second. So seeing that, led by Casey Mize, who currently has a .48 ERA across his 2 starts. He started out the season as a reliever. He's made 2 starts now. He's sitting at a 0.48 ERA, so that's definitely has been a boost to Seattle. But their bullpen ERA is sitting at 9th in the AL. So losing Ricky Vaughn, who is one of your big relievers, to an area that is a little bit of a weak point compared to your starters. Hopefully they can find someone to step up, but that is potentially some pains that they're going to have to go through. Not only losing Vaughn, but losing him for at least a year, if not more.
I'll just note we had 2 big injuries regarding community players. So, I mean,
Yeah, Isla and
they're,
Vaughn.
so they're not fully invincible from the injury bug. I mean, I had Koshin get injured a couple seasons ago. That kind of hurt me, but
Yep.
not to the level where you're gonna miss the whole season.
Yeah,
Like these 2 players are.
Yeah, these 2 players are impact players for their team for sure, and losing them, it's going to be interesting to see how both of these teams can respond to it. All right, so we're moving on to our next portion of the podcast where we talk about who we think are the best and worst teams of the sim of these 2 weeks plus 3 days that we did this time. What do you want to do first? You want to do best or you want to do worst first?
Let's end on a good note. So let's go bad teams first.
All right, you want to start?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I'll start. Of course, it's my team. We went. Let me look at my notes real quick. We went 4-12 in the last 2.5 weeks. And mainly is our defense because we have a 390 FIP this season, which is 4th best in NL. But we have a negative 9.7 zone rating, which is 14th, and we're 14th in defensive efficiency. So I just don't know what to do right now with my team. Our pitching staff has not been well. Mike Kennedy and Kyle Freeland kind of stuck it up, but like I said, with our defense, I mean, I'm a defensive-minded GM. I feel like I have a good defense. They're just not performing well right now. Like you did, was it last season that you had trouble with defense?
No, it's 2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago.
Yep. So I know that full well, and that you bring that up. That was what my going into the off season before last. My goal was to improve my defense. That was my number one goal, and I brought in center fielder Joe Adell, third baseman Anthony Rendon, who both improved the defense of that position. And I started a rookie at shortstop who I didn't expect to do anything offensively. I put him there purely because of his defense, and might have had considerations for a Gold Glove if it wasn't for your shortstop.
I mean, Nelson Nunez is not an
He's not the issue.
offensive-minded player, but he hasn't put up the numbers that he usually does. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the big issue is. I mean, I fired my bench coach.
Ooh.
I fired my hitting coach because the coaching cohesion was they were feuding with each other.
Okay, so you think that might have had an impact on the team performance?
It could have.
Okay.
But I mean, my outfield is not hitting at all. Franchy Cordero, Rob Stratton, Brendan Trevino. Brian Reynolds came back from injury and he's hitting well. And Barry Bonds, I wanted that spark in the outfield. It's just been a frustrating season. I know I'm going all over the place because I'm not sure what to talk about my team because they've been pretty bad so far.
Yeah, and
Um,
from my perspective, it's been. I think this is probably the surprise of the season so far because I said this during the offseason when you and I were having our banter back and forth. Is literally my moves that I made. My goal is to win the Central, and I know you came back with, well, we're looking to win the World Series, and I was short sighted, but like I saw you as my number one. I mean, you're coming off an NL Central division championship, so I saw you as the team to beat in this division. And to see, like you said, it's not that the talent isn't there; it's that the team is underperforming. Uh, and like you mentioned, well, with the Steam Nunez, he's not the issue. He's got a 3.7 zone rating right now. It looks like it's the outfield and that not only is hurting offensively but also hurting defensively. Um, so yeah,
they're not a bad defensive group either in the outfield, so
right.
it's frustrating. But I mean, we've had some bright spots like Edgar Barrios. I mean, he's on
He's one of
pace
the
to
top
hit
hitters in the league right now for sure.
he's on pace to hit 50 plus home runs. Koshin's he's 1-3, but I mean it's not because of him pitching poorly.
Yeah, it's because of the defense behind him, like you mentioned.
And he's hitting well too. So
Yeah.
he has a 901 OPS, I think. So
Yeah, I think everyone can agree that the Pirates 9-20 start to the season is not what anyone was expecting, and is probably the most disappointing starts to the season. They are the only them and the Yankees are the only two teams to not hit 10 wins yet, and we're over a month into the season.
we had a 9-game skid, which
Yeah.
I mean it was tough to go through that,
Yeah.
but we'll see what I mean. I still have optimism for the season, so it's not
Yeah,
over yet.
and that's what I was saying earlier is that your team still has the talent. I mean, it's you guys were the NL Central champs for a reason last year. It wasn't a fluke, and I believe that you guys can turn around. It's a rough start to see the players performing the way they do when you have the expectations of challenging for not only the get back-to-back division titles but challenging for a World Series. So we'll keep an eye on the Pirates to see if you make any flurry of trades like you've been known to do before, or if you're going to see if you can figure out the right combination of players. But looking to see the Pirates turn around, because you're already 10.5 games back in the division. That's going to be even with a lot of the season, that's still going to be tough to overcome.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so for my worst team of the sim, I'm going to play a little guessing game. I'm going to list out facts about this team that happen across this sim.
Okay,
And
I'm not gonna look.
what's that?
I'm not gonna look.
No, that's fine. You might already know, but okay. So this team, after the first sim, they were second in their division.
I already know who it is.
They are now last in their division. They are in a Western division. They only won 4 games of this sim, and he was number 10 on either one of the power rankings that we had last week. They were number 10.
Oh, that caught me off guard.
And that's why I've listed them as the worst team of the sim, because they were ranked in one of our top 10. So do you know who that is?
Is it the A's?
You're half right. There's actually 2 teams that fall into this category.
Dodgers.
The Oakland A's, who I had listed as number 10, and the LA Dodgers, who you're Cody, JR had listed at number 10. We both listed these teams at number 10, and both of these, that list of facts that I read off to you are true for both of these teams. They were both second in their respective divisions in the West. They both won 4 games this sim, and they are now both last in their division. And we had them ranked as number 10 because of their starts to the season. And I mentioned last time that Dodgers were my number 11 team. I was choosing between Oakland and the Dodgers, but I chose Oakland because they had swept the A's in that first sim. But both of them came up with a struggle of a performance this past sim, and I think that's why they had the worst of the sim, because they had started the season strong. But came crashing down this sim to dropping from second to last in their respective divisions. Oakland's now at 11-18. The Dodgers are now at 11-17. Dodgers are on a 5-game losing streak. Oakland's on a 3-game losing streak. So those are definitely some disappointing performances for both of these teams, as they both started pretty decently. They weren't one of the best teams to start, but they were still at near the top of their respective divisions, and they both came crashing down to earth this sim with 4 wins for both of them this sim. So those are, I kind of cheated. I labeled 2 teams as my worst because they both were pretty much had the same sim.
I mean, you're spot on with that, but like with the A's, I'm not expecting much from the A's, so that hot start was pretty surprising for them. I'm surprised how the Dodgers did this sim. So
you think this is less surprising for the A's than for the Dodgers?
Yeah, I'm not expecting this from the Dodgers because they have a decent team with a good rotation. So
yeah, they were definitely a team that was potentially contending for their division. So we'll see if they bounce back. They're not too far out because the NL West kind of did a whole flip with their teams this sim, which we'll get into in a little bit. As actually, I'm going to go ahead and use that as a segue. My best team of the sim is now the current division leaders of the NL West, the Colorado Rockies. And we kind of touched on it earlier with Grant Levine and oh gosh, what was the name of the I can't remember the name of the player of the month. I needed to write this down.
Walker Smith.
Walker Smith. I knew it was something with a W. But Colorado ended this sim with let's see, they actually had the most wins out of anyone in this sim. They went 11-5. No other team had 11 wins. We had a bunch of teams that had 10 wins, but only Colorado had 11 wins, and they took that and went from, let's see, where were they in their division? They were third in their division. Yeah, they were third in the division. They've jumped up to first with this strong stretch. They've won 7 out of their last 10. Like I mentioned, they won 11 out of their 16 games in this sim, and their offense is carrying them for sure. They are a team that, no surprise, is offensive minded. When you play in Coors Field, if you got to focus on offense because that's playing into your strength. They are top of the NL in a lot of categories, including runs scored, on base percentage, OPS, weighted on base average, and they're also rated first in their base running efficiency. So that is an impressive performance. The only thing that worries me in terms of whether or not they can keep this up is they also have the most runs against. So they've scored the most runs in the NL. They've also given up the most runs in the NL. And the GM of the Rockies is definitely leaning into his team strength and trying to focus on offense because they play in Coors. They play in Colorado. They have the mile high effect on offense, but it's also being a detriment to their pitching right now. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep this up. But the fact that they won 11 out of 16 games this sim, that is why they're my team of the sim, the best performance.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think they had a really good sim, and they're deserving of this attention, lack of a better word. But their pitching is to see their rotation. No one's under their best ERA in their rotation right now is 6.11. But like you said, they're playing to their strengths, and can't knock them for that. I mean, they're doing well right now.
Yeah, I think one of the key series was actually the series against you. That was one of the most highest scoring series I've ever seen. They swept you in this series, but it was 9-7, 10-8, and 9-8. At least 7 runs for either team in each of those 3 games. So that kind of speaks to what Colorado's doing. They're scoring. Basically, it's like their best defense is a good offense. They're trying to just outpace the runs that their pitching is giving up. So
it's a good strategy, and it's paying off right now.
Yes, but is it sustainable? That's going to be the big question.
I don't know.
That's the big question mark. All right, so you said you disagree though. So who is your team of the sim?
So I know GR picked the Tigers here. But I'm
Spoiler.
gonna go a different. Yeah, but I'm gonna go a different direction. Because we haven't really talked about this team much at all. About any good things about this team besides like first overall picks or like prospect wise, but they did well this sim, and it's the Miami Marlins. They were 10-6 this sim. They lost Andy Diaz though, which is gonna be a big hit for them. He had 38 home runs last year, and over 800 OPS. But he's only gonna be gone for another 5 weeks. So,
Let's see. Yeah, 5 weeks.
so I think we should talk about this team now while we have a chance, because you don't know if they can keep this up. You don't think they can keep it up, but who knows right now? The 9th overall pick from last season, Ruben Carrasco, has 6 home runs already. And his OPS is at 818 as a first baseman. So, and he's good. He's a good defender at first base, so that's good. Then you got Osiris Johnson, shortstop. He's on pace for 20 home runs and 102 RBIs. And that's just not like he's not that type of hitter, so you know that's going to regress a lot as we get through the season. And like we mentioned earlier, John Vergara, I mean, he's off to a good start along with Alek Manoah and Sidney Alcantara. And they still have a 35-year-old Madison Bumgarner there in the rotation. And they got a young stud, Jake Willis, in that 5th spot. He's had some bad luck so far. He's pitched to a 3.63 FIP. He has over a 4 ERA, but he's on pace for a 5.0 WAR. And their closer, he's kind of had some luck to his side. He's 8 for 8 in saves. Riley Self. He has a sub 2 ERA, but he also has a negative WAR. And that sub 2 ERA, I mean, compare that to a 4.65 FIP. So, I mean, the Miami Marlins are riding on some luck right now, and it's good to see that. With how, if you look like how long they've struggled, how many years they've struggled, and been last in that division.
Yeah, they were actually a big piece of the one of my worst teams, the Dodgers. They were a big piece in setting back the Dodgers. They swept the Dodgers in 3 games this sim. Yeah. They also took 3 out of 4 out of the division leading Washington Nationals. So that's definitely an impressive performance. And looking at their team rankings, they're a little bit of the opposite of the Colorado Rockies. So we just talked about offense first, pitching second. The Marlins are going strong with their pitching. Out of a little bit of their offense is to be desired. It's not the complete flip where Colorado's best in hitting and worst in pitching. They're not the worst in hitting, but they're in the bottom. They're not even inside the top 10 in their offense in the National League, but their pitching is top 5 in the National League. So it's kind of like our 2 best teams were kind of like complete flops of each other. Like the Marlins are strong in pitching, the Rockies are strong in hitting. Both of them rode their strengths to a strong sim. So I definitely think it was not a team that people would have picked out as being the best performing team of the sim. But when you look at what they did, they swept the Dodgers. They took 3 out of 4 from the Nationals and ended this sim at 10-6 and now sit 3rd place in the NL East, and a highly competitive NL East, as all teams are within 5 games of each other. They're only a game and a half back of the Nationals. So definitely a team to look out for, see if they can keep this strong stretch going. Is their offense going to show up, and can their pitching keep this up? So kind of the opposite questions from the Rockies.
They need Andy Diaz bad.
They do. They don't want him to be gone for too long. That's their number 4 hitter. missing from the lineup for sure. All right, so moving on from our teams of the sim, we're going to get more specific and talk about our top players of the sim. We don't want to talk about the worst players of the sim because that's just it's too hard to find the worst players of the sim because you can find a bunch of players that don't get hits or anything like that. But we'll go ahead and start with the pitchers. My pitcher of the sim is none other than the stud of the Baltimore Orioles rotation, Ethan Knight. I need to look up his stats really quick from this sim specifically. He had 3 starts this sim, only gave up 3 runs across all 3 starts. So that is a run per start, 30 strikeouts. So that's 10 strikeouts per start. And so that was a 1.09 ERA, a 0.61 whip, and just 15 strikeouts for every walk that he gave up. Just a dominant performance overall, and was a key factor in the Orioles bouncing back from their bad start to moving back up in that AL East division. Definitely needed that out of Ethan Knight for the Orioles in their bad start. But that is just some dominant pitching performance from Ethan Knight. Who do you have as your pitcher of the sim?
I got Freddie Peralta from the Dodgers. He had 3 starts. He pitched 15 and 2/3 innings. He doesn't go deep in ball games, which is kind of a knock of him, but he's very productive in those innings. He's had 30 Ks. Going to give up 4 hits and 8 walks. 8 walks is high in 15 innings, but he didn't give up a run. With a .77 whip, get this, he had this sim 17.2 Ks per 9. So he's a high strikeout guy, and the best start of that 3-start stretch he had was 5 innings of no-hit baseball, 2 walks, 14 Ks in 5 innings on 86 pitches. But he was pulled because he doesn't have a lot of stamina. And they lost 1-0 against Miami.
Yeah, and it's really disappointing because not only did he lose that game to Miami, it was a 1-0 game. All 3 of these starts where he put up scoreless performances, his team lost the game. He lost 3-2 to Atlanta, 1-0 to Miami, and 2-0 to San Diego. This is the Jacob deGrom effect for the New York Mets. This is a fantastic pitching performance with no offense to back him up. And so you got to be frustrated for Peralta. The big prize of the free agent signing this past offseason, absolutely dominant, but you have to wonder if he had more stamina behind him and was able to go deeper in the games, would the Dodgers offense be able to give him the support he needs? And doesn't look that way right now, but you absolutely right. 3 straight scoreless performances, but in none of those games could he get to the 7th inning. In 2 of those games, he didn't. He might have pitched in the 6th. It might have been like a 5+ affair, but he never got to the 7th inning. And so, despite the fact that he's pitching this strong, you have to think the lack of stamina is hurting him here, and that offense of the Dodgers needs to step up and give him some support, because losing 3 games when you throw 3 scoreless outings of over 5 innings of baseball, that's got to be frustrating for Peralta. But definitely a solid performance of Peralta. 3 scoreless outings, definitely deserving of a pitcher of the sim for sure.
But just that 1 start, 5 innings, no hits, 14 Ks is just dominant.
The only runners he gave up were 2 walks. That's it.
Yep.
That's
14 strikeouts is just
14 strikeouts in 5 innings. Like that. Hold on, 5 innings. That's 15 batters. That's 15 outs, and 14 of them were strikeouts. Like, what in the world? And his team lost the game.
What the? Jeez.
Oh my gosh. You got to feel bad for Peralta. He's pitching his heart out, striking out everyone but one batter. He can't go past 86 pitches, and his team ends up losing 1-0. That's heartbreaking.
The poor guy's gonna ask for a trade.
I wouldn't blame him though. Unless the
Um,
Dodgers can turn around their offense. But there was a
yeah,
reason
I
why I
mean, they
labeled
were
them as the worst team of the sim, along with the A's. And it's not because of Peralta.
no.
Oh, man. All right, so you have your pitcher of the sim. Who is your hitter of the sim?
I feel like it's been Colorado themed so far. I'm gonna add to that. So Grant Levine, um, he hit 345 on base, 457, and he slugged 793 for a 1250 OPS. And he hit 6 home runs and get this 18 RBIs.
Yeah.
So he now has 10 home runs and 30 RBIs in the season, which is tops in the NL.
Yeah, we talked about the strong Colorado offense earlier, and Grant Levine is a big part of it. It's why that's why I mixed him up with Walker Smith for the batter of the month, because I knew it was a Colorado player. I just mixed up which Colorado player it was because there's so many of their players that are hitting really well, and you've got also when you have Saya Suzuki in the lineup, Jim Horner, one of the best offensive catchers in the league. This is a team that is offensively stacked. It's like kind of like the Seattle Mariners over on the other side, but the fact that the Rockies have an advantage with that ballpark.
Yeah.
But Grant Levine, I definitely agree. It was a very strong performance. Had the most home runs in this entire sim. I don't think anyone. So a couple other players got 5, but I think he was the only one to get 6. If I let me sort my stats here.
I mean, 18 RBIs is also ridiculous as well.
I was wrong. There's one player that had more home runs. Joey Best of the Chicago White Sox had 8 this sim, which breaks my heart because I traded him last year. He was a part of the Matt Wallner trade. So he's outperforming Wallner right now. But I mean, hey, it's a hitter's park in Chicago, pitcher's park in St. Louis, so I'm not looking too much into it.
But it's not that much of a difference, though.
It's more than you think in White Sox pitchers or the hitter's park there. Anyway, that's beside the point. Grant Levine is Koty's hitter of the sim, and my hitter of the sim. I was going to give a nod to JR here. My hitter of the sim for this sim was none other than Taylor Trammell, looking to bounce back after his disappointing year last year. Exploded this sim with a 435 average. Same on base percentage. He didn't get walked at all, but when you're hitting 435, you can let that slide. Only had one. Oh wait, I'm looking at Jonathan India. That's the wrong Cincinnati player. Jonathan India also had a really good sim, by the way, even though he played in half as many games. Sorry, 413 average, on base percentage of 486. My bad. I was looking at the wrong Cincinnati player on my list here. He had 5 home runs this sim, 11 RBIs, and also swiped 5 bases. So he is looking to bounce back from that season last year where he definitely underperformed per the expectations there in Cincinnati. But he is bouncing back in a big way this sim. Also added in 5 doubles and 11. I already mentioned 11 RBIs. So that's a bright spot in the Cincinnati lineup. That team is not off to the best start, but you can take the pauses where you can. Taylor Trammell's on fire right now.
You know how much I hate the Reds. I'm glad to see Tram start doing well, and I mean I know it makes JR very happy that he does well, and I know that Tram's not part of the Reds system in real life, so it's a good little alternate universe for him that you see like a player that was drafted by the Reds do well in this universe for his team.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, if the Reds weren't a division rival and seeing the Reds in a potential rebuild mode, I would be thinking long and hard about potentially trading for them. But I know JR is going to try to fleece me as being an interdivision rival, trying to get a good trade because he doesn't want to go up against Taylor Trammell.
And it's also against his hated rival.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You're not going to give up a player of Trammell's caliber to your rival unless you get the world sent back in return. So it's disappointing to me. I kind of want Trammell in my lineup, but I don't think it's going to happen. All right, and then so those are our players of the sim. So now we are going to move on to probably my favorite segment of the podcast, and that is our top 10 power rankings. This week, we're going to list out for Koty. We're going to say Koty and JR are quote unquote of the same mind. So if you see, like, because I'm going to put on the graphic how much they've moved this week, whether up or down. I'm going to base it off of what JR ranked it last week, but this is Koty's complete list. He didn't go off of JR's list. So we'll just say they're the same person for the graphics sake. But we're gonna go 10-1 here. I'm gonna go ahead and start out by saying that I only had one team drop out of the top 10 from my previous list, and I've already mentioned them this podcast, and that is the Oakland A's. They dropped out of my top 10, and replacing them at number 10, falling 3 spots, are the San Diego Padres. They had a decent sim this past time out, but they didn't quite perform as well as you would have hoped after their start. They were atop their division to start the season, but they went 8-7 this sim, slid down to second in their division. So they didn't fall out of my top 10, but a little bit of a disappointing performance, playing around 500 after the strong start to lead the division. But they're still a quality team. They're still playing decently well. They didn't have a horrible outing. Had a couple of tough opponents, and they couldn't match the offense of Colorado. Got swept by them, but they took care of business against LA, swept them. But they took 2 out of 3 from my team, the Cardinals, as well as the Pirates. But they lost 2 out of 3 to the Giants. So back and forth sim for them. Had some positives, had some negatives. So that's my number 10 on my list.
For number 10, I have the Indians. They swept Seattle to start the sim. They took 2 out of 3 from Detroit and Detroit. They lost 2 out of 3 to Minnesota. 1, 2 out of 3 in Philly. And right now they played 2 out of 3 of Detroit, and they split it so far. But I think this is off to a good start. Number 10 was hard for me because I was thinking maybe Minnesota, maybe Tampa. I mean, they're around 500, but they're still a good team. Definitely not Pittsburgh though. But they're off to a good start so far, and they're a little bit of a surprise because you didn't think they were gonna be in contention for the Central. At least I didn't. But the Central is very competitive. The AL Central, and you got Frankie Lindor. I mean, he's been putting up high WAR seasons for almost a decade now.
Yeah, he's one of the most consistent, top performing players in the league.
So, yeah, him and JRM had his 300th home run this sim. So, but they lost Shane Bieber, so that might hurt him for a little bit.
Yep.
I think they replaced him with Sean Weimer, who's 2-0 with a 7.94 ERA. So they've been hitting pretty well. Yeah, but that's my number 10 team for this sim so far.
All right. So who do you got at number 9?
It was your number 10, so the Padres. I'm not gonna touch a whole lot on them because you just touched a bunch on them. Tatis is just hammering the ball. I mean, he's on pace for a 12.9 WAR, almost 50 home runs. But yeah, not much to say about them. I think they're gonna be in contention for the division come September.
Yeah, they definitely they maintained their second place spot, so you got to give them credit for that. Or well, they were first after the first sim. So, but anyway,
They're a game back. So.
Yeah, they're only a game back, and the as we already mentioned a bunch of times this sim, the Rockies had such a strong performance this sim, and they definitely deserved to jump the Padres in the standings. So my number 9 team, falling one spot from my previous position, are the Milwaukee Brewers. Um, Again, it's kind of the same story as the Padres. They didn't have a horrible sim. They went 9-7. So unfortunately, didn't really couldn't make any progress in trying to climb the standings in the NL Central. They stayed in second place. They did they did what they needed to do. The only downside was they had a 4-game losing streak in there where they lost 2 against Minnesota and then followed it up with 2 more against Philadelphia at the beginning of this sim. So that was a rough start to their sim, but they turned it around by sweeping Chicago and then taking 2 out of 3 against Miami and LA. So they ended the sim on a strong note, and then they're going into Cincinnati for a 4-game series. So they're looking to keep that momentum going. But they're still a top 10 team in my book. They're second in the NL Central. But there were a couple teams that I moved up in my rankings that I think are at this time in the season a little bit stronger. And so that's why I've got Milwaukee at number 9.
Who do you have at 8?
So my number 8, falling 3 spots actually, is the NL East leading Washington Nationals. And I think they struggled this sim. They ended on a strong note by sweeping Kansas City. But losing 3 out of 4 to Miami hurt them greatly. And then they lost 2 out of 3 to Philadelphia and St. Louis. It was not the best sim for them as a division leading team. They're fortunate that Atlanta didn't do so well this sim, or else Atlanta would have jumped them in the standings. It's a really tight division right now. The top 3 teams are within a game of a half of each other, with the Nationals going an even 500 this sim, the Braves going a little bit under 500 this sim, and then the Marlins, as you mentioned earlier, having the really strong sim to jump up the standings. You're playing 500 balls, so you're not going to stay in the same spot in the power rankings if you're just playing 500 ball. So it's good to see that they ended on a strong note. They're on a 4-game winning streak right now, so we'll see if they keep that going. But they had a rough start to the sim, and they're barely maintaining that NL Central lead, or NL. I keep mixing it up. NL East lead right now. So who you got at number 8?
So Colorado. Honestly, Colorado should be higher on a lot of people's list. It's just I want to see some stability and I want to see them sustain success for another few weeks before I put them higher.
Yeah, that's fair.
The pitching, and it's always in Colorado, the pitching. So we'll just see what happens and if they continue the success. Personally, they would be up on my list higher in the future.
All right. What about number 7?
Number 7, I have the Chicago White Sox. So the White Sox have had they've fallen off a bit. Once it hit May, they're 1-5 since May. They lost 2 out of 3 they lost 3 out of 4 to Baltimore. They lost the first 2 games to Boston so far. They have a game 3 coming up tomorrow night sim. But they finished April off strong with 5 straight wins, sweeping Toronto and taking 2 out of 3 from Texas. They're splitting the series in LA. Just when it turned to May, they fell off a bit, so that's why they're a little down in my standings from probably other people's.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said earlier, Joey Best has 11 home runs so far. Nate Louis, the guy traded to Hedges. He has 9 home runs so far. So he's really taking advantage of that home run hitter's ballpark in the South Side.
Yep. And I actually 100% agree with you. I also have the White Sox at number 7. For pretty much the reasons that you mentioned. They just fell apart once the calendar turned to May. They finished April. What was their record in April? They only lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in April. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
15. They went 15-7 in April, and so far in May they're 1-5. So they definitely fell off a cliff once the calendar turned to May, and that's a little bit disappointing given their strong start. I could have made them fall as far as the Nationals in the power rankings, but I kept them at the top because they had a stronger start to the season than the Nationals. The unfortunate part is the other teams in the AL Central had stronger performances to climb the standings compared to the NL East teams that were going up against trying to climb against the Nationals. Which is why at number 6 I've got the Cleveland Indians. I know you ranked them down in 10, but I've actually got them at number 6 because I believe that they had a better sim recently compared to the Chicago White Sox, and they've actually jumped up to 2nd in that AL Central standings. And I'm trying to look at their schedule right now to talk through what games they've had done. They have one more game to play against Detroit after taking 1 out of 2 from there, as you mentioned. But sweeping Seattle, their only downside was losing 2 out of 3 to Minnesota. Which again, that AL Central, they're gonna beat each other up this entire season because they're also evenly matched. Because they took 2 out of 3 against Detroit and then lost 2 out of 3 to Minnesota, and now they're playing Detroit again. And it's going to be a back and forth thing. But I think the Indians impressed me with their performance. They ended up going 9-5 across this sim to jump up to 2nd in the standings after starting the first sim out in 3rd. So that was a strong performance for me, and they actually jumped up 3 spots in my power rankings, and I have them barely edging out the Chicago White Sox for that number 6 spot. So who you have at number 6?
I have a team you already mentioned so far is Milwaukee. One reason I have them so high is because they won 8 out of 10 to finish the sim. So they're pretty high right now. I mean, they're going to Cincinnati tomorrow's sim. So that's going to be a good NL Central rivalry right there. And D-Mac, Darius McKenzie, is on fire to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
He's hitting 366, and his OPS is over 1,000. So
that's a scary offensive shortstop there in Milwaukee, that's for sure.
Absolutely, and his defense is not that bad either. So it's a good shortstop in Milwaukee. The NL Central is tough, man. So Milwaukee, I have at 6.
All right. Getting into our top 5, who you got there?
I got Washington.
Okay.
I mean, I'm basing this off talent and what I expect and their starts, and I just think Washington just has pure talent on their team. I mean, they have probably arguably the best lineup in baseball in this league, and their rotation is nothing to laugh at either. Their bullpen might be a little suspect, but besides that, I mean, they've just 2nd in runs scored, and they only allow the 4th least amount of runs pitching wise. So they're still a really good team.
What's killing them is their bullpen. Their bullpen is 13th in the NL in ERA. I think that's what's losing them games right now. They should have more wins. They have a top 5 offense across the board, like you mentioned, and their starter ERA, the only team that has a better starter ERA. And yes, I'm going to do it because it's my team. I have the best. My Cardinals have the best starting ERA in the National League, but their bullpen is struggling right now. 4 pitchers have over a 6 ERA in their bullpen right now. So you think you might wonder if Washington's going to make some moves to try to shore up that bullpen because they could be better than 16-12 right now. So that's why I had them ranked a little lower because I feel like they should have won more games than they have. But yeah, so that's your number 5. And my number 5 is my new addition to my top 10. That is the Colorado Rockies. I just think their performance was stellar this sim. In terms of their offense anyway, their pitching we'll just discard that because of the fact that they won the most games out of anyone in this sim. But they're sitting there at number 5 for me, leading the NL West, which is what people didn't expect. People expected that to be between the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Dodgers, and then all of a sudden now Colorado's leading the division, and I don't know what's happening. There's 2 teams that are definitely performing below expectations, and that is your Pirates and the Arizona Diamondbacks. And you have to wonder, is this going to be the division that ends up having the most parity and changing of who's going to be first, who's going to be in last? Because we thought it was going to be the AL Central with the teams evenly matched, but I could see the Dodgers making a run and jumping up to the top after ending this sim at the bottom. Same thing with the Diamondbacks in 4th. And then the Giants are sitting there right in the middle, and everyone thought they were going to be at the bottom. And it's just that NL West is crazy right now. But the Rockies I have sitting at number 5 in the power rankings right now, just based purely off of their offensive firepower. They're just killing the ball right now.
So I feel like we have the same top 4, but I don't think it's
Is it going to be in the same order though?
Order.
I believe you're correct because none of these teams have been named yet that I've seen. But it'll be interesting to see what the order is. My number 4 is the LA Angels, and I've kept them at the same spot that I did last week. They just they did enough to maintain essentially, and that's why they're at the same spot. I mean, yeah, you would hope that they would play better than 500 baseball. They went 8-8 this sim, but they're still maintaining their AL West lead as opposed to the White Sox, who also went 500 this sim. So they did what they needed to do. They split the series against Chicago. What else did they do this sim? I just remembered that off the top of my head because that was my series of the week of the sim last time as I was looking for that matchup, and they just ended up splitting it. They've lost their most recent one. They lost 2 out of 3 to Milwaukee. They took 2 out of 3 from Texas, which is a key division rival, as well as taking 2 out of 3 from Seattle. So I think they maintained their top of the standings because they played well against their division opponents, but didn't do so well against the outside division opponents. So that's why I'm maintaining them here at number 4, because they won the games that are probably more important to win when you're trying to maintain your lead in a division, taking 4 out of 6 against your division rivals. But then they split against Chicago and then lost series against Kansas City and Milwaukee. So that's why they didn't quite end the sim on a strong note. But I still think they have the defending World Series champs. They're definitely one of the strongest teams in the league. And they're winning the games that they need to win in terms of their division. So that's why I've got them at number 4.
Well, I have them at 4 as well. Pretty much everything you just said. There's a guy that I think he's having his career year. I mean, it's still early, but Tamora Mori, the $60 million man. I mean, he's off to a red hot start. He's on pace for 8 WAR right now. 341. His career high is 284, which was last season. So, I mean, the Angels were the World Series champions, and you can't. And then you got Shohei, so
yeah, I mean,
you can't beat that.
Yeah, Shohei is leading the team in strikeouts with 32. He's also leading the team in home runs and RBIs. So, not the best ERA out of Shohei, but it's actually about the same as his FIP. But so maybe he wants to cut down how many runs he's given up. But he's still that 2-way threat that I don't think anyone else is going to be able to match that kind of performance. An all-star level pitcher and an all-star level hitter. You can't match that.
There's some guy in Pittsburgh that's pretty close.
He's still getting there in terms of the hitting. His pitching is definitely good. Koshin's hitting is almost there. Almost there.
I mean, 900 OPS is not that bad right now. So,
Not that bad.
of course, Otani is the better hitter.
For now.
They both won the Cy Youngs last year, so.
And they're both two-way players, so yeah. All right, so into the top three. Who you got at number 3?
Who do you think I have at 3?
You better not put me at number 3.
I don't have you at 3, but I have Boston. I have Boston at 3. They had the best record in the last podcast that you guys did, which, by the way, you guys did a great job.
Well, thank you.
This guy named James Leblanc has the highest WAR in this league right now.
What kind of name is James Leblanc? I don't know, man.
I don't know. I mean, his picture has a bad goatee on it, but
we love you, Kamish.
he knows I like him. I mean, he's on pace for a 13.5 WAR. His OPS plus is 195. I mean, where did this offense come from? He's supposed to be that Dustin Pedroia type player with some good contact and good defense, and he's just hitting the cover off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and not only that, like he's got a ton of walks. He's already been walked 17 times. He's getting on base at a 460 clip right now. That is huge at the top of a lineup.
And they still got Mookie Betts, Benny Biceps, Andrew Benintendi, Rafael Devers,
and last year's Rookie of the Year, Danny Diaz.
And they have a decent rotation. Chris Sale had a good sim. I was thinking of him being my pitcher of the sim. And he's been injured a lot the last few seasons, so it's nice to see him have a good sim. But yeah, Boston, I think it's very sustainable for them. Run against, tied for 3rd. Their stars ERA, this rotation's a little suspect. I mean, they're 10th in stars ERA, but 2nd bullpen ERA.
Yeah,
and
kind of the
3rd
opposite.
runs.
I was gonna say it's kind of the opposite issue of the Nationals. The Nationals had really good starter ERA, but their bullpen was blowing games. This is the other way around. The bullpen's kind of coming in to save the day because the starters aren't doing so well.
I'd rather have my bullpen save the day than my bullpen to blow it in. So.
I think I would agree with that, and that's why the Red Sox have a better record, honestly.
Yeah, and the 3rd in runs scored, so their offense is really going. So
yeah, and I don't really have much else to add because they are also my number 3 team. Again, off to that strong start, they were at the top of my power rankings last time, but they dropped a little bit because while they're still playing well, they went 500 this sim. Their strong start in the first sim kept them at near the top of the power rankings, but they've kind of fallen off a bit. Now they are playing well against right now they've won 2 straight against the White Sox, and they've got one more game against them coming up in our next progression. But they got swept by Houston, which is probably their biggest downfall here, and they lost 2 out of 3 against Tampa Bay. So that was a division rival. And I mentioned before, division rival games are the ones you want to win. Losing 2 out of 3 is a little bit disappointing, but they did enough to maintain the top of their division because of their 10-3 start. And that's why I've got them listed at number 3. And then at number 2, I have the surging Detroit Tigers, who did a very good job this sim, went 10-5, jumped the White Sox and the Indians to lead their division now. They are looking very strong. They took 2 out of 3 against Minnesota. They were a part of the Oakland Athletics downfall, sweeping a 4-game series, which you don't see very often. Their only blip was losing 2 out of 3 against Cleveland. But they took 2 out of 3 against Kansas City as well. they just look extremely strong right now. They have a top 2 offense in the American League. They're second in runs scored, but best in batting average and on base percentage. And their pitching, goodness gracious, their pitching. They have allowed the fewest number of runs in the AL. Is it more? It's across the entire league. They have allowed the least number of runs in the whole league. And to combine that with a top 2 offense, that is scary right now. It's kind of the same story as we were talking about with the Red Sox, though. Their starters are not playing as well as one would hope. Their bullpen is saving the day. They have the best bullpen ERA in the AL. They have the best pitching WAR in the AL, but that is mainly due to their bullpen. Let's see. Of their bullpen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pitchers have under a 2 ERA and one has an under 1 ERA. And that is just fantastic. The only person that has a questionable ERA is their specialist, Richard Lovelady, with a 6 ERA, but he's only pitched 6 innings. So it's not like it's having a huge impact on their performance. But you look at their lineup, Ian Happ having a career year so far, batting .312 with 7 home runs. Keibert Ruiz, the big trade acquisition in the offseason from the Rays, hitting .356 with 4 home runs. There's no one that's performing poorly in their lineup. Everyone is at least doing average, if not above average to great. Bregman is probably not playing as well as they would have hoped, but he's still not playing terribly. And when you have, we've talked about Colorado with a strong offense, poor pitching. We've talked about Washington with the struggles that they've had in their bullpen. Detroit is strong across the board right now. They have strong pitching and strong hitting, and they're a little bit scary right now. This is the Detroit that we kind of expected coming out of the gate. They started a little slow, but they picked it up this sim and now sit atop the AL Central.
So don't be mad at me. So going into this, I was like, I'm gonna be unbiased. Well, in power rankings, you still have to be a little biased, but in different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because you hate the Cardinals or something like that.
I see what's coming.
But number 2, I have the Cardinals. Flaherty's pitching well. Stever, I said that he's going to be a bust, and he's pitched well. Dakota Hudson, Karen Burns, and the independent league, Jerry Frank is off to a 3-0 start in 5 starts. Dominic Aguilera, Evan White, Joe Adele, Matt Water is hitting .295 somehow. Anthony Rendon, .297. You definitely improved this year. I'll give that to you. The 4th in runs scored. First in runs against. Best starters ERA. You're 8th in bullpen ERA, but it's still a 3.74, so it's still not bad. And your first is zone rating, man, and defensive efficiency. So that's always great to see. But the reason I have Detroit first, and this is the only reason, to be honest with you, is run differential. Your run differential, the Cardinals' run differential is plus 54. The Tigers, plus 72 already.
Mm-hmm.
Plus 72. And honestly, that's the only reason I picked Detroit, number 1. Because it was, at first I had St. Louis, but I just did more diving, more searching, more research. And you just can't argue with a plus 72 in early May. You're scoring runs, you're pitching well. Dexter Morgan, 287. Felix Matthews, 260. Mullins, 271. Ian Happ 312. Keibert Ruiz 356. Even Jose Altuve is hitting 291 at age. What age? He's 35 right now. So Tigers are my number one. St. Louis is my number two, and I hope there's no hard feelings.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give my case as to why I have the Cardinals at number one, and a big part of it is the teams that we have beaten. This last sim, we took 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks, 2 out of 3 from the Nationals, which are 2 strong teams. Now, obviously, the Diamondbacks are not playing as well as they would have liked this year, but the Nationals are a division-leading team. And I don't believe this sim Detroit played a division-leading team. But all your points are valid. I say that right now, it's like you could put either Detroit or the Cardinals at number one, and it's probably because of our respective biases that we have it listed the way we do.
Honestly, the only reason I picked Detroit over St. Louis is just how much bigger their run differential has been so far.
And honestly, I probably would have put Detroit first if I didn't have St. Louis at second in my first power rankings, because the Cardinals, we started out the year in the first sim 9-3 and followed it up with a 10-6 performance, which is tied with a bunch of other teams as the second most wins across the sim. Detroit started at 8-4, 1 game back of the Cardinals in terms of their record, and played 1 fewer game and had 1 fewer loss. They went 10-5. The Cardinals went 10-6. So they essentially had a very similar sim. So that's why I still put the Cardinals at number one. But I will grant that it is going to be really hard for the Cardinals to maintain that number one spot if Detroit keeps playing the way they do, because they have consistent performance. They have a better offense than the Cardinals right now. And the pitching is right there with the Cardinals. The Cardinals right now, our biggest question mark is our bullpen. Like you said, we have our bullpen ERA is 8th in the NL. And to be honest, it's mostly coming from the players that are not the back end of the bullpen. It's coming from those middle relievers and specialists that are not performing well. So I'm okay with the fact that the back end of my bullpen has been solid, but I'm like, this middle of the bullpen with Kevin Hernandez, John Snead, and Zach Britton is scaring me a little bit. Our offense is probably, I think there's still room for improvement. Evan White in particular, he's not hitting. He's supposed to be a get on base average type hitter, and he's hitting 222 right now. So I'm hoping that he turns it around. And Adele had a strong start, but he's fallen off. He's batting like under 200 the past couple of weeks, so he's kind of fallen off. But the surprise of my season has been. Oh, go ahead. What were we gonna say?
I'll say this: when you were talking about Detroit, it was all positive.
Mm-hmm.
And with you talking about your team, there's some negatives that you're talking about, like Evan White and other players not hitting as well. And I think that's why Detroit should be number one. Which I don't see. Like, I can see why you put St. Louis number one. I mean, it's justified, and your points are validated. Just my opinion. I think with your bias, you kind of pushed St. Louis up a little high.
And I'm not going to deny that. Because the more I look at it, the more I'm like, you could make the argument for either team to be the top. They have the 2 best records in baseball right now at 19-9 and 18-9. So, I mean, Cardinals do have 1 more win. So there's that too. Also, to your point about me saying negatives about my own team is you can probably attest to this. You are your own worst critic. So I'm looking at, like, I may be off to a great start, but I'm always trying to find, okay, what's going wrong with my team that I should fix now before it becomes a bigger problem and pulls me down from the division lead. I'm not going to sit here and say we're doing well. I'm going to sit back and let this ride. I'm always looking at, okay, what can I do to make sure I maintain this? That's probably why I'm talking more negatively about my team, because of that, because I'm my own worst critic. But again, as you mentioned, the performance of Detroit cannot be ignored. I could have easily put them at number one and put the argument, but based on the overall record just being one more win above the Tigers, plus they were ranked, they had a better start to the season as well. That's why I put the Cardinals at number one. But next podcast, Tigers could easily be at number one if they keep up this performance. And if they do keep this up, I book this. If they keep up this performance, I will put them at number one.
Or Boston could be number one again.
Boston could flip it back around too. Boston did not have the best performance. They went 8-8. So this sim. So they fell off a little bit, but they're still one of the top teams for sure. So, well, that is our top 10 power rankings with a little bit of controversy and a little bit of bias. I'm not going to deny that bias had a play in putting myself at the top. I mean, when I see my team with the best record in baseball and I had ranked myself number 2, I'm like, okay, I should put myself number 1.
Good.
So
it feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good. I do not think I'm going to maintain that. I'm actually off to a better start than I expected, to be honest.
You know, if we were doing this last year, I'd probably put the Pirates first at the start of the year because we.
You started off really strong. Yeah, for sure. And it was funny. You mentioned earlier, I can't remember which. Oh, it was Nationals. You were talking about how you probably had them ranked higher because of pure talent on the roster. I was going to say, if we were going off pure talent, I'd have the Pirates at the top 10.
I mean, I'm talking about pure talent and
along with performance. Right.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant. I was just going to I just had to. You guys had the potential. I'm scared to see what'll happen once you guys get hot. And watch, you guys get hot and we get cold, and it just completely flips the division. We'll see. But so yeah, those are our top 10. I'm sure other people will have their perspectives as well. Put in the comments what you think we got wrong. Am I being too biased with my own team being number 1? I was trying to avoid that last week, but this week I didn't want to. Also, we can, if you join the Discord, if you haven't already, we can continue the discussion in there as well. All the GMs, all the creative players are discussing the league. Please be sure to join that as well. As we look forward to the next 2 weeks plus 4 for that we're going to cover on the next podcast, what do you think is going to be the series to watch moving forward?
First of all, I want to thank JR for letting me be in his place tonight. Thank you also, Kamish. But my series to watch it's gonna shock some people, and it's Arizona against Atlanta. And they're both around 500 right now. They both made the playoffs last year. They're both really good teams. And I wanted to see who wins that series. Are they gonna take off and get back into the hunt? Be where they're supposed to be, because they both should be in the top 10 of these power rankings. They're very good, so I want to see how that series plays out.
Yeah, so a couple of playoff teams, as you mentioned, looking not the best out of the gate. So you're looking to see which of these teams can take advantage and try to turn their season around early on. That's definitely going to be something to watch. And because you can tell that the two GMs of these teams are like, this is not the start we wanted.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to go top tier. I'm going to go with the reigning World Series champion, Angels. And it's a prove it time for the Cardinals. The Cardinals and the Angels will play.
Another bias.
What's that? Yeah, I know. But when I was looking at all of the other series, there were very few series that put top teams against each other like this one.
I think it's a very good series to watch, and it's going to be very competitive. And it could be the worst series matchup the season. So
I'm not going to put myself in the World Series conversation yet. I need to see consistency out of my team before I start having aspirations of the World Series, because you have teams like the Angels. Detroit is on fire, and you can't count out the gosh, who was the other side of the World Series? The Nationals, right? They were on the other side of the World Series. You can't count out them because, like you said, they have that talent. So I would love to put myself in the World Series picture, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But this series is a chance for the Cardinals to prove they belong at the top of the power rankings, at the top of the division, as a potential World Series contender if they can perform well against the defending World Series champion and AL West leading Los Angeles Angels. It's I think it's the only series of this upcoming slate of games that have two division leaders going up against each other. And if the Cardinals can at least take 2 out of 3 in this series, it can show that they're here to contend. Now, they don't want to overlook the Pirates leading into that, because like we've mentioned, you guys have the talent, and if you guys can take 2 out of 3 or sweep us, that can completely start the momentum turn that we were talking about potentially happening. But I think the real, what's the term, litmus test is going to be against the Angels this sim.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think another funny point is, look at your screen. You're so professional, and look at me. I'm just laying in bed with my hand behind my head, just chilling.
You're relaxed, man. I'm the one that's like, I'm trying to make sure everything looks good. You're just like, I know I look good, and I'm gonna relax because of it.
I do not look good.
No, it's fine. We really appreciate you coming on and filling in for JR at the very last second, because literally JR and I were trying to record for the past 2 days with this whole CBA negotiations going on in MLB, and he's like, if something happens, I have to be at work, so I'm busy right now. And then obviously we're recording this Thursday, a few hours after the CBA was agreed to, and he's like, yeah, I can't make it tonight. So
it's for a good reason.
Oh, it's definitely for a good reason.
That, so.
But thank you so much for stepping up and filling in. You did a great job. I love having the friendly rivalry between you and me. Everyone thinks that we really don't like each other, but it's all out of respect. We have a good time with the smack talk. We know it's not personal. Yeah, we definitely respect each other. I love talking eMLB. Thank you again for coming on. It was a great time, a lot of great discussion, and enjoy the upcoming sims. We've got one. Hopefully this will be posted before the Friday night sim, but I still got to edit it. But there will also be a new schedule coming up for you guys that saw the last podcast. Kamish is changing his schedule around in terms of when he will be streaming the sims that will be taking place. We've got one this Friday, which will be a 4-day sim. And then after that, we will be running on a Sunday, Monday, Wednesday sim schedule. Sunday will be 7 days, Monday will be 3 days, and Wednesday will be 4 days. And so after those 3 days of sims, expect another podcast to hopefully come up on the Saturday, the day before the next sim. So that is hopefully going to be our schedule moving forward. Obviously, we're going to have to be flexible because real life obligations can sometimes change either the schedule for Kamish's sims or our recording for the podcast, as we just saw this week. We were trying to record this on Tuesday, and then it was just like, oh, it's Thursday. We need to get this recorded. Koty, can you help us? It was literally like, hey, Koty, can you help us last minute? And he did a great job of preparing. Once again, thank you for that. So please be sure to tune into Kamish's streams. They are always a blast, always a lot of great conversations. GMs, creative players are all there talking about what's going on. We got another. Do we have what's tomorrow's game of the night? I should have this already written down.
It's KC and Cleveland, I think.
Kansas City and Cleveland. So a chance for the surging Cleveland Indians to keep climbing the AL Central standings. Did we ever agree on Sundays? To be determined what Sunday sim will be. But this has been fun. And until the next podcast, take care, everybody.